Okay, so we're picking up from the last harmonic hierarchy video, and today we're going to be talking about cadences, or basically how chord progressions end, and secondary dominants, how to use cadences in the middle of phrases from, kind of hinting at a different key to strengthen certain chords inside the phrase. We also can't forget cadences. Cadence is literally to fall, and basically it is the way that chords resolve into each other. And in diatonic harmony there are a big four. There's lots of different ways to do cadences, but in diatonic harmony there's the big four. There's the authentic cadence, which is 5-1. There's the plagal cadence, which is 4-1, also known as the amen cadence. There's the half cadence, which is anything to 5, and then hanging out on the 5, right? So we could do something like... And it kind of is an unresolved leading chord progression because, that 5 wants to resolve, so it, that can be used very effectively to lead into the next section of music. And then finally there's the deceptive cadence, which is 5 to anything, but usually to 6. We've definitely heard that sound before. That was a 1, 4, 5, 6. And as I mentioned, things get a little bit deeper. If you travel, if you spend time studying classical theory, then you'll see that, there's a couple of different types of authentic cadence. There's the perfect authentic and the imperfect authentic, which is based on voice leading. There's the Phrygian cadence, blah, blah, blah. But we're just talking about the big four in diatonic harmony right now. Okay, so let's get outside of diatonic harmony a little bit and take what we know and put it to use, right? This harmonic hierarchy stuff. Let's talk about secondary dominants. A secondary dominant is when you make a certain chord in the middle of a chord progression a temporary tonic, right? That's you're going to pretend that it's the one chord just for a second, and then you're going to set that new one chord up with its own dominant chord that sits outside the key, right? So if we take a look at that 6-2-5-1 chord progression again, even with the E minor there, and we add some secondary dominants, here's what it'll sound like. Alright, let's break this down. First things first, I changed the chord progression from 6-2-5-1 to 6-4-5-1. And I did that because I didn't want to hang out on that D minor for 2 chords in a row, right? So now the basic chord progression is... Alright, and then next to that 4 chord, I have a D major. D major is not in the key of C. It's got that F sharp. It would have to be a D minor. It would be a minor 2, right? So how does that fit in? Well, the chord after that is a G. Guess what's a 5 of G? D major. So we call that a secondary dominant, or the 5 of 5, right? And you'll see this written in Roman numerals. You'll see 5/ whatever chord it's leading to. So in this case, we've got a 5 of 5, right? Here's our 6, our 4. Now we're going to put in the secondary dominant 5 of 5, because major 2 doesn't fit. Major 2 is not part of C major. And then it resolves to 5. And then 5 in the key leads to 1. And at the very end, I've got a turnaround, right? What used to be that E minor, that minor 3, if we were still in the key, is now an E major. G sharp is not in the key of C major. So we know that the chord after it is, this is probably functioning as a secondary dominant for the chord after it. Well, E major is the dominant chord of A minor, right? So we can say that the E major at the very end of this chord progression is a 5 of 6, leading back to 6. Right? So here we're using secondary dominants with authentic cadences each. Each of them lead directly to their temporary tonic chords as a dominant chord. Again, we've got 6, 4, 5 of 5, which is that D major, which leads to 5. And then we've got 5 to 1, and then 5 of 6. Now, secondary dominants usually sound best when you're using authentic or deceptive cadences, right? So I already showed you how to, what it sounds like when you use an authentic cadence. Let's check out some examples of using a deceptive cadence for this trick. One of my favorite examples of this is Weezer's Say It Ain't So. So when you pull all the chords apart, what you've got is C sharp minor to G major to A flat major to E flat major. When we're in C sharp minor, when we're in E flat major, that's a 6. Then we've got this 3. If we were in E flat minor, it would be G minor, right? So we've got this major 3 which doesn't fit. So we know, especially by looking at the next chord, that it is probably going to be a secondary dominant. So we call this 5 of, and G leads to C. If this was going to be a 5, just a regular resolution, it would go to C major, but it doesn't. It goes to A flat. So it's 5 of, in E flat, C is 6. So we've got 5 of 6, but it leads to the 4 chord. And then down to the 1 chord. So what we see here is the secondary dominant resolving with a deceptive cadence, right? The deceptive cadence being 5 to anything else. So 5 of 6, which leads to 4, and then to 1. And if you remember, the 4 to 1 is called a plagal cadence. The Beatles do this stuff all the time in their discography. They had a really unique and interesting take on harmony and would do really cool stuff with secondary dominants all the time. One of the strongest examples to me is from the song Something. And it goes 1, 1 major 7, 1 dominant 7 to 4. But let's take a look at that a little bit differently, right? The 1 and then the 1 major 7 are both in key, but that dominant 7, now I'm starting to think secondary dominant. Where does it go? Well, it goes to the 4 chord. The 4 chord, if we're thinking in fifths again, is a 5th below the 1 chord, and that sets up an authentic cadence, right? 1, 7, 6, 5, 4. So if we start looking at that dominant chord, that dominant 1 chord, which kind of comes out of nowhere, which then leads to the 4, as a secondary dominant, we've got 1, 1 major 7, 5 of 4 to 4, resolving with an authentic cadence. This passage from No Reply is really cool. It chains secondary dominants together, right? We've got a 1 chord. Right away, if we're establishing that this is C major is 1, right away we go to an E major, not in the key. So that's probably a secondary dominant, right? Well, E is the secondary, or E is the 5th off of A, so we're probably leading to the 6th chord, which in C major is a minor chord. Sound familiar, right? Well, the Beatles chained that chord to another secondary dominant. They went to an A7 instead of an A minor. Right there. And then from there, they resolve that to a D minor, A being the fifth off of D. So we now have, this is really cool, right? If D minor is the 2 in C major, we've got a 1, 5 of 6, which leads, instead of to a 6, it leads to a 5 of 2, which now goes to 2, 4, and then back to 1. All together. However, probably the most famous use of a secondary dominant is in the opening of Beethoven's First Symphony. So it opens up with a 5-7 to 1, and then immediately goes 5-7 of 5 to 3, which is a deceptive cadence. So now we covered a lot. That is basically the harmonic hierarchy, or at least how I think about it, right? We've got our diatonic weight classes, we've got our cadences, and then we can trick and kind of get outside the key a little bit using our cadences and using our understanding of the weight classes to get these cool outside the key resolutions that strengthen certain chords and certain destinations in your chord progression. Anyway, I hope that helped. I know that was a lot. Check out the exercises on my Patreon page. Keep exploring.